And we are live. We are back, spoiler-free wrestling. If you are new to these videos, I'm going to tell you how this all goes down. So basically, with spoiler-free wrestling news, we want to give you all of the wrestling news, but none of the spoilers. So what we do with these videos is I run down everything that's making headlines in the world of professional wrestling today, but I omit any information which could potentially spoil your enjoyment of future shows. For example, leading up to the Royal Rumble, we would have given you all of the wrestling news that you want, but we would have avoided covering anything that mentioned Ronda Rousey was booked to return in the Rumble. This would have just allowed you to enjoy Ronda Rousey's return organically, as if you had no idea she was going to be in the match. So a lot of people really appreciate the way that we cover professional wrestling in this spoiler-free manner. So if you think you'd enjoy wrestling better without the spoilers, then I'd encourage you to click the subscribe button to this YouTube video. Check us out at spoilerfreewrestling.com. Click the like button and also share this video with anyone else who you feel would appreciate this style of wrestling coverage. So over the last 24 hours, I have 7 different news stories that are spoiler-free, that are making headlines in the world of professional wrestling. And we are going to start off with some big news involving Shane McMahon. All right, so if you watched our video yesterday, we talked about how there was some backstage heat on Shane McMahon as a result of comments that as a result of sort of his antics backstage during the Royal Rumble. So Shane McMahon was working as a producer in the Royal Rumble match. He doesn't work backstage with WWE a lot, but he has done that kind of role before. He worked as a producer for the 2021 Men's Royal Rumble match and also for the 2020 Men's Royal Rumble match. But according to various reports, he was much more hands-on this year and sort of ruffled a few feathers backstage. Now the news that is coming out is that Shane McMahon's antics backstage during the Royal Rumble were so bad, were so combative and confrontational with other people, that he has now gone from WWE. He's gone from the company that his family owns. Now, obviously, I mean, Shane McMahon is Vince McMahon's son. He's not gone forever. But I mean, he's gone for the time being. And we'll see what the future holds for Shane McMahon in WWE. But here's the gist of the story. And I can't give you all the details because all of the details include some spoilers. But Shane McMahon was at one point scheduled to be in the Elimination Chamber in Saudi Arabia later this month. He was also scheduled to be at WrestleMania. Now neither of those two things are happening. So reports from Ringside News, which I know Ringside News is a very controversial source of news for wrestling. However, the reports that they've been putting out lately have also been sort of like the Wrestling Observer and Fightful have both sort of confirmed. I don't want to say confirmed because it's still all hearsay and kind of rumor a little bit. Like everybody's talking to anonymous sources. Nobody wants to put their name on the record. But Dave Meltzer, Fightful, other sites have confirmed that Shane McMahon has backstage heat in WWE as a result of his booking of the Royal Rumble match. He reportedly wanted to make himself sort of the center stage or the central focus of the Royal Rumble match. He was also scheduled to start a feud with a wrestler in the Royal Rumble, and so he was pushing for this wrestler to be involved in the Rumble match. I'm not going to say who it was, just in case the storyline still takes place. Evidently, other people didn't think that was a good idea. So Shane had been booked to be in the Elimination Chamber match, which is on February 19th. However, it's now being reported that Vince McMahon has removed Shane McMahon from the Elimination Chamber, from WrestleMania, and he's been quietly let go from the company. And so I will put this up on your screen now. This is an article from the Wrestling Observer newsletter, or the Wrestling Observer website. And let's just see if we can get something here. So Basically, there were numerous changes in the Royal Rumble match. Dave Meltzer reported the news Wednesday, confirming an earlier report by Ringside News. Meltzer said Shane McMahon is out of the company, but it's unknown whether his talent deal was terminated or if the plans for him the next 2 months were simply dropped. After nearly a year away from in-ring action, the 52-year-old made his return in Saturday's men's Royal Rumble match, entering at number 28 and later eliminated by eventual winner Brock Lesnar. Following the Royal Rumble, Meltzer said on an episode of Wrestling Observer Radio that there was a lot of heat on McMahon due to his booking of the men's Royal Rumble, a role which he has performed and helped with in the past. While Meltzer didn't have all the details at the time, he said McMahon had an idea of what the Rumble was going to be, and then a lot of that ended up being changed, which rubbed some the wrong way. So, this is kind of interesting. I mean, Shane McMahon's had a very sort of choppy relationship with his family's company over the years. So, just piecing together everything that's happened from interviews, things that we've seen or heard on podcasts, Shane McMahon got into a conflict with Triple H and Stephanie that led to his departing the company years ago. He was gone for like 7 years. He returned because he kind of wanted his kids to see him wrestle. And so he wrestled Braun Strowman at WrestleMania last year. And he was set to come in and be a part of WrestleMania this year. He returns in the Rumble. He was going to do something in Elimination Chamber. And then he would go on for a match at WrestleMania. However, since he was also a producer in the Royal Rumble match, he, I guess, was argumentative with people trying to get himself to be the center focus of the Royal Rumble match. His storyline leading up to WrestleMania as the featured story in the Royal Rumble match, other people were pushing back against him. And this situation got so nasty, apparently, that Shane McMahon is now gone from the company. So, considering he's Vince McMahon's son, it's pretty hard to get let go from a company that your father owns, But looks like we won't be seeing Shane McMahon at the Elimination Chamber or at WrestleMania. So that's sort of the big news story that's making headlines as of late, but there's a few others. And so, just loading up this tweet from AEW. So Brian Kendrick, you might remember, he was working backstage as a coach and a trainer in NXT. Now, there was a story that came out recently that he had requested his release from the company, and he had waited somewhere along the lines of like 6 weeks. Well, it's now being reported that WWE has granted his request release. He's now officially a free agent. Wasting no time at all, AEW has booked Brian Kendrick to face Jon Moxley tonight on AEW Dynamite. So that's interesting news. It's kind of interesting, like the people that request their release from WWE. Brian Kendrick requested his release from WWE. It was granted. Toni Storm requested her release from WWE. It was granted. But then you've got Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali requested his release from WWE, and it's been said that it won't be granted. Mustafa Ali is not going to be granted his release from WWE. And you have to sort of like wonder why, what's different between Mustafa Ali's situation and Brian Kendrick's and Toni Storm's. Because WWE used to not, like anytime, before AEW, if a wrestler requested their release from the company, it wouldn't be granted. They would always just hold on to talent until their contract officially ran out. With the idea being, and this is just speculation, but I think a lot of people have speculated that WWE did that because they didn't want all this talent on the free agency market that another company could come in, scoop up, and build a good roster out of. Now, however, AEW's already done that. AEW's already come in, signed a bunch of free agents, well, they were free agents at the time, and put together a great roster. So now it's like, well, whatever. Okay, what we didn't want to happen has already happened, so now we might as well cut our expenses a little bit by releasing the talent that we're not using that don't want to be here anymore. But they won't do it for Mustafa Ali. And I think that's very interesting. Because the rumor is that WWE suggested a character change to Mustafa Ali that he would never go along with. And that there was some argument, there was some fight between Mustafa Ali and Vince McMahon. I think I've heard that reported somewhere. Whether or not that's accurate, who knows. But there was some disagreement between Mustafa Ali and WWE involving this character that was suggested to him. But now, he hasn't been on WWE programming since October, so why aren't they releasing him? Why, when he's requested his release, do they deny it, but they won't do that for Toni Storm and Brian Kendrick? They'll just let them go. And you can make the argument, well, Mustafa Ali publicly requested his release, and so that's why they're not letting him go. But I would have to imagine that Ali privately requested his release first. And so we don't know why they won't let Mustafa Ali go, but there's a few things that you can kind of speculate on. Like perhaps they think that Ali is going to say something that embarrasses the company if he leaves WWE. Perhaps they're thinking that the situation is repairable and maybe that they do have use for Mustafa Ali on their television show moving forward if they can just sort of mend fences a little bit. But I don't know. I think Mustafa Ali would probably have a home to go to in AEW if he was to be released. And I think WWE just doesn't want Ali saying things that are embarrassing to the company in public. So maybe there's some negotiations going on. Perhaps, sometimes in these situations, the company might offer some type of severance package in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement, which would prevent him from sort of saying what it was that led to him leaving WWE or requesting his release. So maybe some type of negotiations like that are ongoing. We really don't know. But Brian Kendrick, he'll be on AEW Dynamite tonight taking on Jon Moxley. Also, as it concerns WWE releases, we have an echo? Oh, dude. Somebody's saying we have an echo. I'm going to try just closing this and see if that helps. All right, let me know in the chat if that echo problem is solved. Hopefully it is. All right. So, news today on February 2nd is everybody that was released in WWE on November the 4th is now officially a free agent. So up on your screen right now, we got a tweet from Keith Lee. Keith Lee pointed out that he is now freed. He goes, "Through victory, my chains are broken. Time has freed me, and now the force shall guide me." So Keith Lee has to be one of the biggest free agents that someone, figuratively and literally, that somebody could sign out of this crop of wrestlers. So I've also got an article here. This is from SEScoops.com, and this is a list of the free agents that are available. So we've got B-Fab. Okay, so not the other members of Hit Row because they were released 2 weeks later. So they'll be free agents in 2 weeks. So B-Fab, Davey Boy Smith Jr. I could see Davey Boy Smith Jr. going back to MLW. He could maybe go to Impact Wrestling as well. Ember Moon. Ember Moon is officially a free agent. That's someone that I think anybody could pick up. Oh, damn. That sucks about the echo. I'm not really sure. I'll have to listen to that on playback. Okay. Sorry, guys. I mean, I'm still getting used to this, so there's still a bunch of things I don't know how to do yet. I just figured out how to do these live things. We're going to be doing these videos every weekday at 1:30 so that you get all of the day's news, and then we'll just put out articles on the weekend so you can keep up to date that way. So, okay. So it says it's gone when I'm on full screen on something besides yourself. Okay. All right, I think I know what that might be. Okay, I'm now on a different mic, so that might help things. All right, let's go back and look at some of these guys that are free agents. And I should be on full screen. Yep. Okay, so Ember Moon. Who do we think Ember Moon might end up with? Like, I think Ember Moon would be somebody AEW would want, but sometimes, like, it's not, like, AEW is just going to take people that Tony Khan specifically is a fan of, right? Like, so sometimes there's, like, not a lot of consistency to it. I had thought when Mickie James was released that she would surely be picked up by AEW. Now, she wasn't. Now, that could have been her wanting to do stuff with Impact and wanting to do stuff with NWA. Or it also could have been just Tony Khan deciding he's not a Mickie James fan. But on paper, Ember Moon seems like somebody that AEW should really pick up because she's someone who's a really good wrestler and people know her. It seems like that would be a no-brainer. But I also thought Mickie James would be a no-brainer. And she evidently was not. Eva Marie is a free agent. I don't see her going anywhere. I just don't see anybody picking up Eva Marie. She's sort of WWE or nothing. Grand Metalik. So Grand Metalik, he was Mascara Dorada before coming to WWE, and he had done a lot of stuff in Mexico. He had also been in New Japan Pro Wrestling for a bit. And he was really good before he got to WWE. Now, he's been booked for a Game Changer wrestling show. I don't know if AEW would pick him up, but I would imagine he'll just kind of go back to doing what he was doing before. So we might see him in New Japan a bit. We might see him in CMLL. Obviously, we're going to see him in Game Changer Wrestling. Karrion Kross is officially a free agent now, and he put out a few videos talking about what might be next for him. Karrion Kross. Where do we think Karrion Kross could end up? Okay, awesome. Yeah, I thought that would solve the echo problem a little bit. But okay, so where do we think Karrion Kross is going to end up? I don't think he's an AEW guy, just because AEW puts so much emphasis on being a good wrestler, and Kross is maybe more of a character than a good wrestler kind of deal. He can't go back to, I don't see him going back to Impact because things didn't end well between him and Impact Wrestling. So he's not going to end up there. He could end up in MLW. He had done like one match with MLW before signing with NXT. So we could see Karrion Kross there. I don't know. He had done some stuff with AAA in Mexico. Conan is a big fan of Karrion Kross. So he'll go back to his Killer Kross gimmick. He'll work with Scarlett. Scarlett is now super rich because she opened up an OnlyFans account, which is going super well. So we'll see what's next for that couple. Also, yeah, as we mentioned, Keith Lee is now a free agent. Now, come on, Keith Lee has to get signed by AEW, doesn't he? Doesn't Keith Lee, if you brought him into anywhere, I think he could be a top guy, a world title contender, the kind of guy who is like your top babyface. He's your Hulk Hogan. He's your John Cena, your Steve Austin. He would be the centerpiece of your show. If he went to Impact, he'd be the world champion. He'd be the top star in the company. If he went to MLW, NWA, wherever, I could see Keith Lee doing some cool stuff in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But ultimately, I think WWE really missed the boat with Keith Lee. Like, he's a top star. And they chose to release him after they tried many silly gimmicks with him. I would hope that AEW would take a long, hard look at Keith Lee and decide that this is a guy who makes sense to bring into their company. But we'll just have to see. Lince Dorado, so along with Grand Metalik, he's a free agent. Keith Lee's wife or girlfriend, I don't know if they're married or not. Mia Yim is officially a free agent starting today. Mia Yim, I could see going back to Impact Wrestling. She has a long history with that promotion. She's done some cool stuff with that promotion. I could see her going there. But AEW really needs to beef up their women's division with experienced wrestlers, which is why I was so surprised that they didn't make a play to bring Mickie James in. Because she's an experienced wrestler. Tons of people know her. Tons of people like her. She's really good. It would give you some publicity to bring her in like it did for Impact Wrestling. And we mentioned this on the show yesterday. Impact Wrestling did its best ratings in close to a year. The episode after Mickie James was announced as being in the Royal Rumble. So Mickie James can be a draw. Like lots of people will tune in to watch Mickie James. She's that good. Nia Jax is a free agent. I don't see her going anywhere, honestly. It's definitely not going to AEW. Like her reputation for hurting people, I think, is a little too much for fans to take a chance on her. She's someone that the quote-unquote internet wrestling community really does not like very much at all. So that's going to make it harder for her to be in a company that is geared towards hardcore wrestling fans as opposed to the mainstream public. If Nia Jax returns to wrestling, it'll be with WWE or nobody. I just can't see where she would end up. Scarlett Bordeaux, I would imagine she's going to end up wherever Carrion/Killer Cross goes. Okay, and then on November 18th, a bunch more, because remember there were more releases in mid-November. So here are the names that become a free agent in 2 weeks. John Morrison. John Morrison's really good. I could see him and Taya Valkyrie going back to Impact Wrestling. They seem to really have a good time there. I mean, she was the longest reigning Knockouts champion of all time. He won the Impact World Championship. They've both wrestled quite a bit in AAA. So, Taya Valkyrie is a huge star in Mexico, right? So she's going to be going there a lot. John Morrison has won a bunch of titles in AAA as well. So they're both going to end up in AAA with Conan for a while. It's just if they also end up in a United States-based promotion. I don't know. Like Taya Valkyrie's a free agent, I believe. And I would have thought they could have put her in AEW's women's division because, again, they are hurting for experienced wrestlers. But she hasn't turned up there, so I don't know. I don't know what's next for her. I would like to see her in AEW or return to Impact, but I guess we'll see. Top Dollar will also be a free agent soon. I could see him showing up in MLW along with Isaiah Swerve Scott. Swerve Scott was he was the MLW World Champion for a bit, so he's someone. Ashanti Adonis are the other Hit Row members. Tegan Knox. Tegan Knox. Now the knock on her is that she's injury prone, but if your roster's as big as say AEW's is, you can have the odd injury prone person because you've got all these people signed who can replace her if she gets hurt. And a lot of people really like Tegan Knox. Drake Maverick, who was fired twice last year, he's a free agent. Shane Thorne, could see him doing some stuff with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Jackson Riker, I don't know what he's going to be up to. Probably nothing. But those are all the names that will become free agents later this year. All right. And the next story I wanted to talk about, Sami Zayn went to the Jackass premiere, and he got himself promptly kicked out. So this isn't something you really need to do a deep dive on, but Zayn basically just went to the world premiere of Jackass Forever. You can see him doing his little dance here. Hopefully that won't get me kicked off of YouTube. And all he did really is he went to the red carpet thing, and he got in front of the Entertainment Tonight cameras, and he basically just called out Johnny Knoxville. They had him taken away with security, and it was just a publicity stunt to get, maybe some fans of Jackass to get them watching wrestling. It's not really like a big deal there, but it was funny, I thought. I thought it was at least funny enough to talk about for just a little bit. Also up on your screen right now is an interview with Nyla Rose that was conducted by Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated. Nyla Rose is a really interesting character because she's a fantastic heel. She's super funny, but she works so well as a heel. But she's also, like a trans, black, and indigenous wrestler who's an inspiration to others. And so it's just funny that, because she's got such like a crass sense of humor, it's weird to think of her as like an inspiration for others, but clearly she is. Just because of what she's accomplished and things like that. But it's just like the way it mixes with her sense of humor I find kind of funny. If you follow her on social media, she's hilarious. Anyway, so if you remember, there was the transphobic sign that popped up at an episode of Dynamite. It said something, well, actually, you know what, I probably shouldn't repeat it, but they threw the guy out, and everyone sort of rallied behind Nyla and said, this kind of stuff isn't acceptable. And again, much like the story about Leo Rush at PWG the other day, you don't want to say it's just like a couple of bad apples or something like that. And it only takes one bad apple to really cause some problems, right? So unfortunately, this guy held up a transphobic sign, and Nyla Rose talked about this during her interview with Justin Barrasso, and here is what she said. All right, and I see there's some comments in the chat. I'll get to them right after we talk about what Nyla Rose said. So she said, for the most part, people understood why that sign was wrong. Maybe that person didn't quite understand the gravity of what they were doing. You want to boo, that's cool, but there's a line. And obviously there was a wave of support for her. She continued, people might feel it's a conflict of their beliefs by simply respecting someone else, but it's not. You don't have to understand or even agree with somebody's situation to show them simple respect and kindness, like respecting their pronouns and respecting their way of life. I'd love for people to be cool with it, but if that's not your thing, it's not your thing. But shouldn't people want to treat their fellow humans with a little respect and kindness? She kept going. My transitional journey might be completely different from somebody else who grew up in the same conditions as I did or grew up in totally different conditions. The transition is completely different for every single person. That's one of the things that gets lost on a lot of people. You hear this umbrella term of transgender and you think it's supposed to be black and white, and that's not the case. For me, I am a binary trans woman. I identify with everything that is femme and female. That's where I'm comfortable. That's where I live. I personally believe it is a broad spectrum and anyone can fall anywhere on it. So that's kind of cool. Nyla Rose is cool. All right, we got some predictions here in the chat. Here are my release predictions. You think Shotzi Blackheart, Liv Morgan, and Aaliyah will be gone early February? Yeah, okay, so I hope not because I like them. Aaliyah's from my hometown. Shotzi Blackheart's awesome. Liv Morgan is awesome. But I think one reason that someone could have as to why they think these three are going to get released is because they've been on television recently and they were put into major programs, but then at the end of those programs, they were kind of the clear loser and were pushed down the card a little bit. So they might be thinking, all right, maybe we tried these people and it just doesn't work. After those people, Santos Escobar will be gone after his last match with Braun Breaker. I mean, that could be good or bad, right? He was El Hijo del Fantasma, the son of Phantasma. No, the son of Phantasma, excuse me. In his Lucha Libre career. Oh, he lost his mask though, so I don't know. But Santos Escobar, I think he would do some cool stuff if he went back to Mexico. He could do some cool stuff in AEW, but I just don't think there's a lot of spots in AEW right now. Pete Dunne leaves. I think Pete Dunne actually re-signed recently. Of course, that means nothing in WWE. They could just release him anyway. Tommaso Ciampa leaves. Maybe, except for Ciampa, they're thinking could start working backstage for the company. Solo Sikoa moved to SmackDown after he debuts helping Reigns get... Yeah, it's time to add a new character into the Bloodline. Yeah, if they could get Solo Sikoa into the Bloodline, I think they'll probably do that as soon as they think he's good enough, like in the ring. Some would say Naomi, but she hasn't been getting any new matches to show. Vince wants her in the Bloodline. I don't think they'll put Naomi in the Bloodline just because she's in the family by marriage. I think plus Naomi's a natural babyface in the Bloodline or natural heels, but maybe. Yeah, Santos Escobar. That's an interesting one because you would think if they were going to release him, they would have released him by now, right? Although, I mean, there's other people in that situation too, because he had a prominent role in NXT, but they've never moved him to the main roster, which is weird because they're always looking for this star to kind of replace Rey Mysterio, and get the fans of Lucha Libre, and he seems like he would be someone perfect for it, but they haven't even tried him on the main roster. I think they'll probably try Santos Escobar on the main roster and then see how he does. But yeah, I could see him being released at some point. Okay, those were some pretty good predictions. I agree with a lot of those. I don't know where Bray Wyatt's going to turn up. There's been nothing on the Bray Wyatt story for some time. Like, he's been a free agent forever. Well, not forever. For several months, which is far from forever. But you get my point. Because he was fired last summer. So he's been a free agent for months and months and months. Now, he was filming a horror movie for a little while. So that was said to push back his thing. There was rumors of him going to Impact, but then it was sort of leaked that Wyatt has no interest in going to Impact. And that, like, going to Impact for Bray Wyatt would be sort of a rough move. I like Impact. Who doesn't like Impact? Well, lots of people don't like Impact, but it's a decent show, and it's doing better lately. But it's just too small for Bray Wyatt. I mean, Bray Wyatt was a huge star in WWE. He made a lot of money there. It makes no sense he'd go to Impact. Bray Wyatt's probably AEW or nowhere, or even possibly returning to WWE sometime. So, like, because if he goes to Impact Wrestling, it brings him down a little bit. It'll bring Impact up. It'll get a lot of people watching Impact, but it brings him down a bit because Impact is, and this is no disrespect to them, but it is a second-tier promotion. They just draw a few hundred fans to their tapings. Their television show brought in 182,000 viewers this week, and that was the best rating they've done in a year. So I can't see him going there, even though there were rumors of that taking place. All right. We got Ricky Steamboat. I think Bray knew about the Impact WWE crossover before anyone else, so he turned it down. Maybe. I wouldn't rule that out. Okay, so MLW announced something today. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is coming in for one show. They have a show in Charlotte on February the 26th. And they are bringing in Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for it. He's going to be in like a general manager type of role. He's going to be the matchmaker for the show. Now, MLW has this character, Cesar Duran, right now, who is the former Dario Cueto from Lucha Underground. He's the current matchmaker for MLW. So I wonder if there's going to be some conflict between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Cesar Duran. All right, so those are the news updates that are out there right now that are also spoiler-free. So let's just run down the card for tonight's Dynamite before we get out of here. And so, tonight's show is from the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. And it is CM Punk versus Maxwell Jacob Friedman tonight. And, you know, that's a huge... Like, we talked about this when they announced the match or on our Dynamite review last week. CM Punk versus Maxwell Jacob Friedman is like a match that could headline a pay-per-view. But AEW only does 4 pay-per-views a year. Evidently, they've decided to do this match on television. And like, this is such a big match. I mean, obviously, they wanted to do it in Chicago as well. They're not going back to Chicago for a pay-per-view until next year's All Out. So maybe they were like, we want to do this match in Chicago. It's more important to do it in Chicago than on like a branded show or a pay-per-view. But you have to wonder who's going to win this match, because MJF hasn't actually lost since he lost the title match to... Oh, well, I mean, there was some losses in that feud with Jericho, but it was, you know... Like, he's not a guy who loses very much. He's very well protected. CM Punk hasn't lost at all since coming in AEW. Then you're like, well, are they going to have CM Punk lose in Chicago? And I was thinking, like, maybe. I mean, they're in Chicago so much. They can't just have CM Punk go over every single time they're in Chicago. At some point, Punk has to lose in Chicago. Well, Maxwell Jacob Friedman would be a pretty good guy to beat him. But on the other hand, like, CM Punk is arguably the company's biggest star. If CM Punk beats MJF, you could move into like a CM Punk versus Hangman Page match at Revolution. Because remember, whatever happens in the CM Punk MJF match tonight, it'll lead into the Revolution pay-per-view. So there's a few different options about what could happen. They could have a match with some type of, like, somebody cheats to win, or there's interference, or something that's just not right. Or it's like a fluke roll-up, or somebody grabs the tight, something like that. And then they could do a stipulation match between the two of them at Revolution. So Punk versus MJF in like a steel cage match, or something like that. That's possible. The other option is that if CM Punk beats MJF, he goes on to the pay-per-view to face Hangman Page for the title. I mean, it's babyface versus babyface, but it's two huge stars. And I could definitely see Hangman Page being the one to hand CM Punk his first loss in AEW. It's exactly what Page did for Bryan Danielson. On the other hand, if you have MJF beat CM Punk, you could have MJF go on to the Revolution pay-per-view to challenge Hangman Page, and that's another pay-per-view main event type thing. The other thing, and I see someone has brought him up in the chat, but the sort of hanging, like in the background, in the peripheral here, is what's going on with Wardlow. Because they've definitely been teasing that Wardlow could turn on the Pinnacle. But, you know, does that happen tonight? Does that happen at the Revolution pay-per-view? And the other thing to consider with Wardlow is, I wouldn't put it past AEW to have all of this be a swerve, where they've teased that Wardlow is turning on MJF and the Pinnacle for so long that we think it's going to happen. We think it's going to happen in this match tonight, but then Wardlow swerves everybody and helps MJF beat CM Punk. That could happen too. Really, anything's on the table. So that match is going on. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Have Keith Lee tweeted anything today since he's a free agent? Yeah, Keith Lee just tweeted, here, I'll put it up. I had this up on the screen. There we go. So he just tweeted this thing that says, it'll take a second to load up. Come on. Through victory, my chains are broken. Time has freed me, and now the force shall guide me. So he's into both free agency and Star Wars. So that's cool. That's cool. Wardlow versus Hook on Rampage. That could be good. I think a lot of people would like to see a Wardlow versus Hook match on Rampage. Also, when does Trey Miguel's Impact Wrestling contract run out? So Trey Miguel signed with Impact. Like, remember when the MSK guys showed up in NXT? When was that? Let's just Google that. Hold on. MSK. Oh, wait, hold on. Trey Miguel re-signs Impact Wrestling. I think it would have been... Yeah, so he's got... It was around like this time last year that he re-signed. So he's probably got... like Impact does a lot of 2-year contracts, so I would imagine he's got another year left on his contract. And we'll see what happens with the guys from MSK, because I could see them leaving WWE because they're really not what WWE looks for anymore. All right. Well, we should finish this up here. Let's go through the remainder of the lineup for tonight's Dynamite. We got Kings of the Black Throne, Brody King and Malachi Black going up against the Death Triangles, Penta El Zero Miedo and Pac. That should be cool. There should be some Poison Mist in that match, which I always enjoy. We got a rematch from the TBS Championship semifinals as Ruby Soho goes up against Nyla Rose. That should be interesting. I'm a big Ruby Soho fan, so I don't want to see her lose, but, we'll see what happens. And then, as mentioned before, Brian Kendrick is going to go up against Jon Moxley. So Brian Kendrick making his AEW debut so soon after being let go or granted his release from WWE. Then being taped tonight in Chicago, but airing on Friday on Rampage. There'll be an FTW Championship match. Ricky Starks defending against Jay Lethal. That'll be really good. And Thunder Rosa is booked to face Mercedes Martinez on this week's edition of Rampage as well. All right, everyone. I think that is gonna do it for this video, guys. So if you appreciate this type of wrestling coverage, our aim is to give you all the wrestling news that you want, but we will omit any spoilers. So be sure to check out SpoilerFreeWrestling.com. Also, make sure you are subscribed to this channel so you get updates via video. Thanks again, everybody.